right, Mel. Time to chat.
All right. What do you want to chat about, Anita?
So, a lot of the widow-sodes that we do, or these small episodes that we do, are based on discussions that are happening in the Widow Wives Club. So, if you're not a part of our Widow Wives Club and you're somebody who's had partner loss, you should hop on in there because we have great discussions in there. Somebody recently brought something up that she thought she was completely alone in, and found out really quickly that, in fact, she is not alone in this feeling. And we have talked about this on the podcast before, pretty head on, pretty directly, but we thought it would be good to talk about it in this context. And the term for this is passive suicidality. And I think a lot of people don't even know that term. I didn't know that term until you brought it up. But do you want to explain what that means?
Yes. Passive suicidality is not the same as being actively suicidal and looking for ways to end your life. Passive suicidality is being in a state where you would welcome death if it came to you. So if you wanted to, if you're crossing the street, you would maybe not get out of the way if a bus was just coming right at you, but you would not cross the street with the intention of getting killed. That's kind of dire, but I mean, anybody that's listening to this probably knows a bit of what we mean. It's very, 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 very common for people who have sustained loss, traumatic loss, significant loss. It doesn't have to just be partner loss. Those that have experienced loss of a child or devastating circumstances, same sorts of things.
There is this sense, I think it's stronger in the beginning of loss, where there's just this feeling of, what is the point of being here? I just want to be with my person. And like you said, most people aren't actively looking for a way to join their spouse in death, but they kind of wish that something outside of their control would come and just take them, so that they could be away from the pain that they're feeling, and to be with the person, and to not feel those feelings of devastation. So we hear that a lot from people. I just wish, I wouldn't be sad if I got diagnosed with cancer right now, or if I got hit by a bus, or whatever those things are. And I think there's a lot of shame around those feelings.
Yeah. I mean, I was watching a documentary last night about a cult. This is this seems like it's going off topic, but it's not.
Okay.
And it was a girl who was severely, severely abused for many, many years, starting at 8 years old. And she said, I would just lie down and wait and pray to die. Like, how much longer can I take this? And as a child, you don't have the skills or the circumstances to maybe escape. And so you feel helpless. And I think a lot of times where we are with this particular thing, we are talking about loss, death. This did not come to us on our own accord. Like, there was nothing that we did, hopefully, to cause our person's death, unless we're a murderer and we are in prison. But it's this big thing that we didn't want, we didn't ask for, it just happened. And now we're like, well, now what? There must be no more reason to live. Now, I am not sure if there are statistics on this between widowed moms and childless widows, but just in casual conversations or in our group, we find that it's even more common with childless widows. We don't have things to, quote, live for. And that's where it gets interesting with the moms versus the childless widow discussions, because it's like totally different stressors. Like, if you're a mom and you're wishing that you didn't have kids, welcome to the isolation of having nothing around you. And then if you're a childless widow that just is like, I wish I had a piece of my person, or I wish I had something to get out of bed for, the moms are like, you have no idea what it's like. And so we are in different boats. And so we never want to compare those like we are the same. But I do see that as a childless widow myself, it's there are times, even recently, I'm 3.5 years out, where I'm like, I don't have anything to live for. Like, I live for helping the widows, I live for my dogs, and that's it right now. Now I know better than to say, I know how my life's going to play out. I've been through a lot of stuff. I know that things take time. You have to put effort in. I know that you have to kind of grow and like intentionally choose paths for healing. So I'm not saying like, yeah, my life's always going to be like this. But I am in that period of time right now. At times, it's hard. The isolation is real.
I was going to say something similar. Even in our conversations together, you'll say things like, you know, if I got cancer, I would just let them, like, I wouldn't treat it. And I am like, oh no, I have to be here for my kids because I put myself in their shoes. They've already suffered one loss. They can't suffer another loss like that. And for the kidless widows, you don't have that same need to stay here for somebody. And so I feel like you're right. Like there probably is a higher degree of that sense of what is this all for? Like there's no purpose in me being here when you don't have the kids to tie you to this life and to this world, because I still find myself feeling very worried and nervous about me dying. But I will say that in the beginning, I was absolutely ready to this is terrible, but this is real. I was like, how can I'm going to take all my kids with me and we're all going to go together. We're going to go drive off a cliff so we can be together as a family again, which doesn't make any sense, you know, and thank goodness that that was not something that I really was considering, but I mean, it felt like a really a really good option at the time, but it's different for me now than it was then, right in the aftermath.
I can see that. It makes me think of, you had high suffering or high pain and low purpose.
Yeah.
Even though you do have the purpose of caring for your kids, but it was so new and changed so much, yeah, it's totally understandable. Um, and I can see how too, even if you do have kids, like there's such pressure anyway, even if you're not a widowed parent, there's such a pressure on parents to do things perfectly, or
Or
everyone knows,
adequately.
well, yeah, when you're in when you're an adult, you're going to always blame your parents for things, there's a lot
Yeah.
of pressure on parents. And so now you add being sustaining partner loss on top of that. And for a lot of our widows that have kids, the dad of the children is the one that is gone, or the mom of the children, the biological parent. So yeah, a lot of complex issues. So how have you dealt with it, Anita? At least in the beginning.
In the beginning, it was just talking to people, and there's this really powerful concept. So, have you seen the movie Jojo Rabbit?
No.
You've seen no movies. You
Well,
just like watch
no,
true
but I
crime. That's
do
all you
know,
do.
I know that Houndstooth Wendy has seen it.
So in the very end of that movie, there's a quote from a poet, and the poem says, "Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final." And that sits so deeply inside of me, that no feeling is final. And I look and I draw on that a lot, and I think to myself that whatever you're feeling right now feels like it's going to be like this forever, and it's not going to be like this forever. And it might take some time and it's going to take some work, but there is going to be purpose again. And you kind of have to just ride out this part and trust that it's going to be different at some point in time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've been feeling this way for a really, really long time. It's something I fight every day. And I think what I've learned so much is, even though we have a feeling like this, it doesn't mean we have to be a slave to that feeling. And so their emotions. And I mean, of course, if you're working with a therapist or a psychiatrist or psychologist, they can diagnose you with certain things and help you in the clinical aspect or therapeutic aspect. But even just like lay people like us, we can recognize that we feel this way, and we can still live.
Mhm.
And sometimes it doesn't often mean that if we take a step that we are going to feel better. It might be a long time. It might take a series of things. It might be hormonal things that we're dealing with. There's a lot of things. So I've kind of, in a way, not been trusting my feelings like I used to. And that might sound really detrimental, but in this case, for me, it's better. Because if I just woke up every day, it's like, okay, we also have anxiety, and anxiety is like huge dread, right? If we wake up and we feed into the anxiety and we're like, oh, I feel this way, therefore I should plan my day around my anxiety. It's a kind of a give and take. You got to see what you can actually handle. But if we only pay attention to those really strong emotions and those strong feelings, then we're going to follow down that path. I'm doing some current reading. I don't have statistics right now, but it's about resiliency and resilient psychology. And they're finding in studies that the negative emotions are of a stronger power and pull than positive emotions. And so that's something to think of too. So easy. The whole old misery loves company thing, it's true. I mean, they're very strong emotions and they're easy to relate with. So it is a fight to feel positivity. And if you are, I feel like you have to make a conscious decision to try and do small little things to combat your passive suicidality, if that's something that you deal with.
Yeah. And like we were saying before, there is power in knowing that you're not crazy, that you're normal in feeling that way, that it's not something that you need to hide. I mean, we've talked about this, and I think it's really great to just be open about it, because then all of a sudden it dispels that, that like, I need to hide this or something's wrong with me. It's like, no, of course you feel that way. A big part of your life is gone, and you are left in the dark trying to figure out who you are, what your purpose is, what is going to bring you happiness and joy again. And in the very beginning, and I mean, in the very beginning, I'm not saying like days or months, it can be a long time trying to figure those things out. And of course it feels insurmountable. And so you don't really want to be dealing with any of those things. And I think just feeling that those things are normal is really helpful in figuring out how you're going to deal with those things, because you don't need to hide them. It's not something to be embarrassed about.
Totally. Awareness is number one for being able to deal with these things. And it's important to understand that you may want to put a timeline on yourself for when you should be feeling better. And like Anita said, it's not a formula. It's kind of a season of life that can have its ups and downs, and it's different for everybody. And so I found that oh, there was a quote that I heard and it made me laugh so much. And it was actually about something else dealing with grief, but it was talking about how we think that we need to fit in these clean little categories. And the person related it to trying to fit into the ridiculously smallest pair of skinny jeans ever. And that made so much sense to me, because we could do this with any aspect of grief, but specifically talking about passive suicidality. If you are putting the extra blame on yourself of, I should not be feeling this, and I should be doing better than this, and I should be feeling better in this amount of time, that's like so many pairs of skinny jeans you're trying to fit into all at once. And it might not be valid for you.
You
So,
only have two legs, and that was like a
right?
three-legged skinny jean.
Totally. So if it is important to have community, this is why support groups are very, very, very helpful in addition to therapy, because you find people that are in the same situation and you know that you're not alone. Suicidality really has an element of isolation to it. And so that's one thing that can help break the cycle. One thing that I've been doing lately, and maybe this will help somebody, I don't know, is logically looking at what I can do to upset the natural cycle of me feeling terrible and not having expectations for what the result is for that. So, okay, I feel like crap. I don't want to do anything. I want to be a recluse. I want to just like think about ways like how I'm going to live probably the longest life ever, and I'm going to be miserable the whole time. Okay. First of all, recognize that it's helpful to write things out so that you can see what's in your brain. Sometimes that does enough just to get it out so you can feel better. But if it doesn't, you'll be able to logically look at it and put it out here in front of you. Take a look and think, what can I do that seems like something that's doable, that is an achievable goal, and not so insurmountable that I don't end up doing it. Go on a walk around the block, go to the grocery store and buy a snack, like something that will just put a little jolt in your day. We've talked about this with other things in grief too, but I feel like this is just so applicable for almost everything that we're dealing with. You can take control of it, but it's a step-by-step, baby step journey. What do you think?
Yes. Yes to all of it, Mel. You're a
Thank
genius.
you.
You're a grief genius. Put the wedge in your thoughts. Do something to disrupt. Something else that I think is really that pours into this is that we lose our sense of self when our person dies. And I think it's more pronounced in people who don't have kids, because I still have the purpose. I still have the mom. Like, that has stayed the same. And for a lot of people, when that's disrupted, it's like, what is my purpose here? And that's something that takes time to figure out. And it takes time to grow your new you and to figure out what you're going to keep and what you're going to get rid of it. It's not something that happens overnight. And it's something that you can really culture over time. And so having expectations that you might not know for a while why you're here. And it's okay to survive kind of as just a blob, not knowing what your purpose is.
Mm-hmm. And that could take a long time, and
Mhm.
that's okay. That's very, very, very common, and it's normal.
And
And it's
it's
probably
stupid.
part of a healthy grieving process, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think that when we are moving through grief, it's better if we do change and we do find new purposes and we're patient about it. So that's hard because we want to know right in the beginning how it's going to turn out. So
Yeah. And one last thing about all of this, society has us thinking that there is a linear path to happiness in life. You're born, you go to school, you graduate high school, you go to college, you get married, you have kids, and then you live your kid life with your kids, and then you have grandkids, and then you die. And guess what? If that's your only expectation for your life following that plan, and it gets disrupted by death or by infertility or by anything else, it's hard because we've been set up this way for society too. So that's something to keep in mind too. If you find yourself a young widow like us and you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever it is, and you suddenly find that maybe your list has been completed, but then your partner died, and so you don't have that extra part with him or her towards the end. Or maybe you're like me and you never had kids and you're like, well, I'm in my 30s now, what, what if I don't want to do those things, or what if I'm just trying to survive? There are elements of society that kind of set us up for those things, so be aware of those. And if you are placing extra blame on yourself that you are not following a quote list, just remember there's not a list. That's kind
get
of
a
a
new
narrative.
list.
It's an optional narrative. I mean, maybe you did want to have kids, and like, yes, that's something that you wanted in your life, and that's okay. And it gets disrupted and you're not okay. And that is normal.
So I think that we should just end by saying that passive suicidality and active suicidality are two different animals. So if you are having active suicidal thoughts, that's something that you should not keep to yourself. Please, please reach out to somebody, therapist, family, friend, whoever, and just hold on, because it's just, we don't
There's help
want.
for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so hard. We see the aftermath of suicide and it's devastating. And you are needed on this planet. So if you're having those thoughts that are different than this passive suicidality, please don't keep it to yourself, and please reach out to somebody.
If you have a plan, that would be considered active suicidality. So please reach out. There are suicide hotlines. If you're not comfortable with that, like Anita said, a friend, even just one person that you trust to tell can make a big difference. And again, that is not the same as passive suicidality. So if you find yourself in the passive suicidality group, go ahead and reach out to us in the Widow Wives Club. You can post about it. You can find comfort there and support. And we are here for you. So we wish the best of mental health on all of our friends in the whole world. And we know that we all have brains. And so that's maybe not
And
possible.
sprinkling you with mental health.
Yes.
Yes. Tell us about all of your struggles, all of your thoughts, and make sure you join the Widow Wives Club. I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
We're two young widows with brains and mental health, and we're trying to help you figure out, widow, we do now. Yay!
Looking at the car wash. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Somebody's knocking on my door.
Okay, bye.